Good afternoon, Erev Tov, everyone. I am very grateful to God and you for giving me the chance to share with you my limited knowledge about Sephardic genealogy in order to help to reconstruct the Spanish and Portuguese crypto-Jew diaspora after the forced conversions to the Christian religion in 1492. This is in part my own history, because the paternal grandmother of my father, Esther Silva, from Chile, revealed to my family that she was a Sephardi. And although I am not a Jew, I have other Jewish lines among my Spanish ancestors, especially from the village of Fermoselle in the province of Zamora, as Jenny Milgram. The northwest border of Spain with Portugal. And even it's very possible that my paternal lineage is of Jewish origin, because my father's most ancient ancestor that I know, Alonso Gonzalez Campo, was a pharmacist and boticario in Spanish, a typical job of conversos in the Iberian Peninsula then. He lived in the 16th century in the town of Badajoz in the Spanish region of Extremadura, 7 kilometers away from the Portuguese border of the region of Alentejo. And in order to complicate more my past, his son, Baltasar, my ancestor too, was a notary public of the Inquisition in Badajoz. This is the truth of my family, and I'm very sorry for this. I must return now to the example that I've chosen to illustrate the crypto-Jew diaspora from Portugal and Spain in the 16th century. In this multifaceted approach to the mapping of this diaspora, I shall focus in one important Spanish-Portuguese family of crypto-Jew merchants, the López Teles in Portuguese, López Tellez in Spanish. Well, always run. That I had to study for one client as an example of the important troubles that crypto-Jew families had to keep their Jewish identity without the Inquisition arresting them. They usually belong to families They usually belong to families whose members were distributed in Portugal and Spain to countries that were joined then under the same monarchy between 1580 and 1640. And in other European countries, mainly France, Italy, and the Low countries, also North Africa and Near East, and even Latin America. So in addition to with a trade network who resisted in Sepharad had more chances to fly from one country to another one, who reside in the Netherlands, some towns of Italy and North Africa were lucky. that they live freely as Jews because their relatives in Sepharad and France had to feign to be Christian. This geographic and religious mobility, unavoidable in most measures, makes more difficult reconstruct the composition of their families and their genealogy. From the Portuguese language, last names and documents, we must jump to the Spanish ones, and from this to the French, Italian, Flemish, and German ones. They will need to marry to reliable co-religionists, and with similar jobs will make that they choose consorts of their same origin, often from their hometown. But we must have into account that the Marranos could change their names in order to not be detected, and in towns as Amsterdam in the Netherlands or Livorno in Italy, they use in public their Jewish names. In this case, we are lucky because this is a family. This family was important. There are a lot of notary documents made by its members, and has attracted the attention of the Spanish historians, who have written about them in some books and articles. So I have not researched about this family as I usually do. In the Catholic parish records of baptisms, marriages, and deaths, but in some trials of the Spanish Inquisition, as those that my ancestor Baltasar wrote, that provide with a lot of data about this family. The most important member of the Lopez Teles was Fernando in Portugal, Fernando López Tellez in Spanish, more known by his alias Fernando Montesinos. He was born in 1588 in Vilaflor, in the region of Trás-os-Montes in the northeast of Portugal, one of the villages of this country with the highest number of converted Jews, close to the Spanish province of Zamora. His parents were Manuel López Teles, a linen merchant born about 1537 in Vilaflor too, and Felipa Diaz, daughter of another New Christian merchant of the same town, who married in 1566. They had 11 or 12 children. Bartolomeu, João, Manuel, Diogo, Pedro, Francisco, 3 daughters, one of them named Beatriz Rodriguez, and the third one married to the merchant Jorge Fernández Ferro. The aforementioned Fernando and 1 or 2 more males who died, probably as a child too. All the males of this family were also merchants. Before seeing what happened to these people, we can wonder if we know something about their ancestors. The parents of Manuel López Teles were the conversos João López Teles, a businessman from Vilaflor, and Catarina Nunes. I found the name of his wife in one trial that the Inquisition of the area of Coimbra in Portugal made against him in 1577-78, charging him with heresy, an accusation also very typical against the converted Jews. But João was absolved. We know even who was the father of this one, the great-grandfather of the López Teles brothers. Fernando Montesinos told about him in the trial that the Inquisition of the area of Cuenca in La Mancha, Spain, made against him for Judaism in 1633-37. And he says that his name was also Manuel López Tellez, an old Christian and nobleman native of Jerez de la Frontera, now in the province of Cádiz, Andalusia, who arrived to Villaflor about 1492, and for this reason he was confused with the Jews. This is what he said. I will try. So the page where he says this. Thank you very much. Here at the beginning he says, en tiempo que en aquel reino entraron muchas familias de judíos de Castilla, admitidos del rey de aquel reino, con que cualquiera castellano que veían lo notaban por judío allá. Y como casó en Portugal, vino a haber confusión su descendencia. I don't follow, but he says this. All was a confusion because he arrived to Villaflor in 1492, but really who was an old Christian. But we know also that in fact Manuel married in Villaflor a rich conversa. We don't know her name, but this is truth. Then it's obvious that he was really a Jew who fled Spain when the Catholic kings expelled them and opted in favor of baptizing himself when the King of Portugal expelled Jews in 1496 too. Excuse me. Now, what became of the Manuel's great-grandchildren? The first one, Bartolomeu López Teles. He was a market merchant, working in Seville, Andalusia, and in Valladolid, in Castile. When his town became again the capital of the Spanish monarchy between 1601 and 1606. He married Violante Rodriguez, daughter of the merchant of Villaflor, Francisco Baez Faro and Leonor Diaz. He died in 1688. The second one, almost them had children, but I have a few time to speak about them. Joan López Teles was merchant in Villaflor, where he was the liaison of his brothers between Spain and Portugal. But since 1614, he worked in the town of Segovia in Castile, where he bought wool and cloth. João married Blanca Enriquez, and they had at least 2 sons. We can see a map of Portugal and Spain this time. Here are the most important towns where the López Teles brothers lived. Sainz and Villaflor, to Porto, to the west, and to the east, Valladolid, Segovia, Madrid, and in the south, in Andalusia, Baeza and Seville. And in the north, it's Bayona, the town in France where most of Spanish Jews cross the border to France. Bayonne in French. The third brother is Manuel López Teles, was also merchant in Seville and Valladolid, but after he established himself in the seaport of La Rochelle in France. This was an important Protestant town, until its conquest by the French in 1628. Then he fled to the port of Bordeaux, also in France, Hamburg, Germany, and finally to Amsterdam in 1631. He changed his last name for the Sierra in Spanish. Fourth brother, Diogo Lopez Teles, known as Dr. Tellez. He settled in Oporto, Portugal, to guarantee the contact of the family businesses with the Atlantic routes. But about 1618, he emigrated to Hamburg and established himself in Amsterdam in 1621. He married Isabel Enriquez, native of Oporto, and they had at least 2 sons. The 5th brother is Pedro Lopez Teles, merchant who worked in Baeza, in the province of Jaén. And when the Inquisition of Cordoba persecuted there the conversos, he fled to the port of Marseille in the southeast of France. He married Guiomar Enriquez, and they lived also in Amsterdam and had some children. The 6th one is Francisco Lopez Teles, who traded also in Segovia. There he managed an important part of the family business in Spain. He had some children. One daughter, whose name we don't know, married, and the merchant Jorge Fernandez Ferro lived in Segovia too, and was likely the mother of Manuel Lopez Ferro, a nephew of Montesinos who lived in Madrid in 1625. Here is a map of France with the most important towns where the Lopez Teles live: Bordeaux, La Rochelle, Paris too, and Rouen in Normandy. The 8th one is Beatriz Rodriguez, who emigrated to Hamburg with his brother Manuel. And the 9th is Fernando Lopez Teles, the most famous and rich of these brothers, born, as we said, in 1588, who helped first his brother Pedro in Baeza and fled to Villaflor when the Inquisition persecuted the Portuguese conversos there. It was then when he changed his last name for Montesinos, although in the trial against him by the Inquisition of Cuenca in 1633-37, he stated that he changed his last name before, when he was 17 years old, during one visit to Villaflor to make happy his mother, in memory of one brother of her called Luis Diaz Montesinos. In fact, Fernando had 5 or 6 cousins named Diaz Montesinos in Torre de Moncorvo, a village close to Villaflor. After Montesinos lived in Valladolid since 1616 with his brother Bartolomé, and established himself in Madrid in 1621 as a market merchant. He married Catalina Rodriguez, sister of the merchants Francisco and Antonio Rodriguez Madrid, a native of Chasim, near to Villaflor too. And after she died in 1625, married for the second time 3 years later, Doña Serafina de Almeida, who lived in Iseda, a village of the municipality of Bragança in Portugal too. They had in Madrid 10 children. I cannot omit that in the trial against Montesinos of 1633-37, in 1635, the Malsin or informer Esteban Ares de Fonseca revealed, I think that with some mistake, the Jewish names of some of the Montesinos brothers in Amsterdam. Dr. Tellez will be there Salomon Erarim, although his first name was David Raleigh, and Salomon that of his son Jorge Lopez. Manuel da Serra was called Jacob Erarim, and Pedro Lopez Serra Abraham Erarim. The self-Montesinos Jewish name was Moses Erarim in the synagogues of Amsterdam, Hamburg, and Italy. And why did they choose Erarim as their last name? This word means mountains in Hebrew and is equivalent so to the Portuguese Serra, range, that Manuel adopted as his last name instead of Lopez Tellez. Why this family chose Serra or Erarim as its surname, we don't know it well, but it can have to do with the last name Montesinos of their mother's family, whose literal meaning in Castilian will be people of mountain, and in its Portuguese form, Montesinos, will mean highlanders. So many thanks, Toda Rabah.